What's up guys, Sean here, and today I'm going to give you the controversy surrounding the TV show Batwoman. So once again, we find ourselves in a situation where the media is giving a show all types of praise because of what it's doing for representation, while fans are upset at a show because the writing in it isn't very good and the characters all come off like blocks of wood. So of course, this leads us to that inevitable situation that we always end up in when Hollywood puts forward a product that the audience that the product is meant for doesn't really like, where the people in Hollywood decide that the reason that the product is failing is due to the fact that the audience has decided, because of their innate prejudices, to hate said product. Because in Hollywood, it's nobody's fault, and if you can find a scapegoat for why your thing is failing, why the thing that you invested money on is failing, then go for that scapegoat. Now I'm tired of this. It's an annoying cycle that we see coming from the media and coming from the far left every time they put forward a character that isn't fully developed, that isn't interesting, but all of a sudden, because they have some paint of representation on them, everybody who doesn't like that character is a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe. I'm tired of having these conversations, and I'm tired of making these videos. Also, I'm old enough to remember when Ruby Rose was announced as cast as Batwoman, and people on the far left didn't like that casting because Ruby Rose wasn't lesbian enough to play the character of Batwoman, and therefore the show was a slap in the face of the LGBTQ community. But now that the show's actually out and it's getting negative reviews, the negative reviews are a slap in the face of the LGBTQ community, apparently. Now, while I'm tired of the media reaction, I'm also tired of the reaction from the fans, because keeping it real, we're only 2 episodes into this series at the time of me filming this video, and one of the episodes is the pilot. The purpose of a pilot is to get a series greenlit, so it's basically introducing all of the dynamics and all of the characters to producers, so producers can decide if they want more episodes. That's why pilots are rarely good episodes, and honestly, history is full of TV shows that have had terrible first seasons that have then been renewed for second seasons and all of a sudden become good TV shows. So I also think it's a little bit too early to judge this show as completely terrible, despite the fact that the first 2 episodes of this show were in fact terrible. And I know a lot of this comes down to the marketing campaign when the first impression that your show leaves is this clip.
I need you to fix his suit.
The suit is literal perfection.
It will be. When it fits a woman.
Yeah, the Batsuit is flawed and it will be perfect when it fits a woman, because wham empowered, yay. When you first introduce a show with that clip and you give that impression to the audience that doesn't like the feminist direction of the media, obviously you're going to have an uphill battle if you're a TV show in order to win over fans, because you started out the show by kind of slapping fans in the face and saying that this show is not about the character Batwoman. This show is about having a woman lead DC TV show. You know, not to be confused with Supergirl, which is a woman-led DC TV show. But this time, the main character in the show is a gay, and that makes it ultimately way more progressive. Supergirl, that show just has Supergirl's sister being a lesbian. That's not progressive at all. That's a secondary character. Are you trying to say that in a show with a Supergirl, that a human who is inferior to that Supergirl can only be a gay? Why isn't Supergirl a gay? And you know, forget Supergirl. Honestly, that show is homophobic. Now we have Batwoman, and all the problems in society have been fixed by this show being created. Now, while I do want to get into the first 2 episodes in a little bit, there are some quick rumors that I need to dispel about this show and about the behind-the-scenes stuff around the show that are just ridiculous and put out by people that don't really know anything about the subject matter. The first misconception is that this show is somehow a slap in the face to the Batman character, that this show was made as a response to Batman, and honestly, that's complete and total nonsense. The reason this show exists, in fact, the reason most of the DC television universe exists, is because Batman isn't allowed on TV by edict from DC Comics. The people who made this show would rather be working on Batman, just like the people who made the show Arrow would rather be working on Batman. Because if you have the chance to make something great with Batman, you definitely do it, because that is a huge career booster. And by the way, this is a guarantee for me. You can expect from this show down the line a ton of teases about Batman maybe appearing in this TV show, even though it's likely to never happen. Because part of the reason that the show exists is to gin up demand among the fans to allow Batman to enter the small screen. Also, they've done this exact same thing before. There used to be a show on CW, or maybe it was called the WB back in the day, called Birds of Prey, which featured Huntress, which was not really Huntress because they decided to make Huntress the daughter of Catwoman and Batman.
Legend tells of a caped crusader, Batman, guardian of New Gotham, and his one true love, Catwoman. Their passion left behind something extraordinary. A daughter, Huntress, half metahuman.
And every episode would end with a tease of maybe Batman appearing. And Batman never appeared in that show because that show was terrible, and for some reason the daughter of Batwoman and Catwoman had weird cat-like powers, which Catwoman sometimes has and sometimes doesn't have, and when she doesn't have it, she's a way better character, which was one of the reasons why that show was stupid. Now, I know I'm one of the only people on planet Earth who remembers the existence of that TV show, but look it up. It is the case that that show existed. It was terrible, and it did the exact same thing with teasing the appearance of a potential Batman. Also, there's Gotham, which, by the way, 2 episodes in, is significantly a worse show than the Batwoman show, because the Batwoman show actually has room for improvement, and unfortunately Gotham has been on the air for years, and if it was gonna improve, it would probably have done it already. It's just never gonna happen. That show was fatally flawed from the jump. Nobody wants to see 8-year-old Batman, nobody wants to see bad origins for villains of Batman, and nobody wants to see the repetitive, time after time, evil twin or secret twin plot that seems to plague that show. Now, I'm sure some people in my audience might be fans of the show Gotham, and I don't want to be the guy who says that if you like something that I don't like, or I like something that you don't like, then we can't be friends and we can't have conversations. But honestly, Gotham is the exemption to that rule. If you like Gotham, unsubscribe from this channel because you are the problem in Western society. You are actually the fall of Western civilization for liking that show, for tolerating that show, for pretending that that show is acceptable. Now that we got all the caveats out of the way, let's get into my opinion of the first 2 episodes of Batwoman. And spoiler alert, this show is not good whatsoever. It somehow, in the first 2 episodes, features another twin plot. A secret twin plot gets revealed within the first 2 episodes, which is mind-blowing. What is it with these off-brand Batman shows and freaking secret twin plots? Like, we didn't need this. And to have a mystery be revealed in the first episode, connecting the villain as the twin sister of Batwoman in the first episode, is such a hack writing, completely rushed, complete waste of time. Now, while the appearance of a secret evil twin within the first episode of the show is a big problem for me, there is one flaw, one fundamental flaw of this series that I think overtakes everything about this series, and that is what I like to call over-connection syndrome. And that's where everything is overly connected to each other because the people who are writing this TV show must think that you and the audience are dumb. But in fact, the over-connection of the characters in this show is so ridiculous that it actually fundamentally undermines the premise of the show. For instance, Batwoman, or the character that Ruby Rose plays that eventually becomes Batwoman, hates Batman. The reason she hates Batman is because there was an incident when she was a kid where there was a car accident involving her sister and her mother, and Batman secured the car, but he didn't secure it well enough, apparently. Likely that's not going to be the case later. And her sister, who turns out to be the villain because evil twin comeback secret twin plot, and her mother died in the car accident, so she blames Batman for her family dying. Now you might be thinking, that's only one connection with Batman, so that's not so bad, because over the course of his life and duties as Batman, he probably would have interacted with a lot of people, particularly people who were in a situation where they were in danger. But that's not the only connection that our lead female has with Batman. She is also Bruce Wayne's cousin, which is an idea that is so short-sighted, so fundamentally flawed, that it actually breaks the Batman universe. Now, I need to go over Batman's origin for the exactly 0 people still watching this video that don't know Batman's origin, but Batman's parents were killed when he was 8 years old. When his parents died, Since he had no family, he was left to be raised by Alfred, who worked for the Waynes. Alfred became his legal guardian. You know what doesn't happen to 8-year-old heirs to multi-billion-dollar companies? They don't get raised by the help if they have living kin. So when this universe tells me that Batwoman's mom is Martha Wayne's sister, I can't buy into that because that completely undermines the Batman mythos. Because if Martha Wayne had a sister, a living sister who was in a stable marriage with children of her own, then why would Bruce Wayne possibly be raised by a butler? I mean, honestly, even if the Waynes outlined in their will that in the event of their death, they would want their son raised by a member of their staff rather than their family, this thing is getting challenged in court because nobody, and I mean nobody, is letting go the heir to one of the biggest companies in the world to be raised by a staff. Like, that's not how people with money works. That's not how people work in general. If Bill and Melinda Gates were shot in an alleyway and they had an 8-year-old kid who stood to inherit all of Microsoft, then it wouldn't matter if Bill Gates wrote in his will that he would want his kid to be raised by Greg the butler. And I don't care if this is something in the comic books, you already have a connection between her and Batman in that she believes Batman is responsible for her family dying. You didn't need this extra connection and all the problems that go with this extra connection. This is the third dumbest and most baffling connection ever made in a Batman property, right behind Gotham deciding that Bruce Wayne needs to meet and fall in love with Catwoman when he's 8 years old and she's little cat girl, and the worst connection ever made in Batman history, the Martha connection, which was actually proposed to be worse by Zack Snyder, and you can look this up, who decided and actually had to be stopped by the studio that Martha and Martha not only should have the same name, but they should be the same person. Meaning, after Thomas Wayne died, Martha Wayne, without her son Bruce, goes into witness protection, marries Jonathan Kent, and then just happens to find Superman. That would have been the worst connection ever in the Batman universe, and it already is the worst as the connection that actually made it to the film. Now, the next issue with the show is the villain of the show, who is named Alice, who, spoiler alert, happens to be Ruby Rose's twin sister that she thought died. Yes, they reveal this plot twist in the first episode, and it's ridiculous. Now, I've seen a lot of people call Alice like a female Joker or a knockoff Harley Quinn, and honestly, that's a little bit of a ridiculous criticism. She's obviously an Alice in Wonderland reference, hence all the rabbits, and her named Alice, which would make her a female counterpart to the Mad Hatter, which is a Batman villain that's also an Alice in Wonderland reference. But she's also cringy, and she wants revenge on her and Ruby Rose's father, who's the founder of this company called the Crows, which is basically private security that took over after Batman left. And the reason she wants revenge against him is because she wants to take away his male power. There's also a love interest for Ruby Rose, who happens to be a black lesbian, and she literally only exists in the show to be a love interest for Ruby Rose, and to remind us that black lesbians are more oppressed than white lesbians, because unlike Ruby Rose, who can live openly with her sexuality, the black lesbian has to marry a dude because for some reason Gotham is not okay with the gays, even though she works for Ruby Rose's father, who's clearly okay with his own daughter's sexuality. But hey, gotta get those intersectional points, because while they won't watch nor will they support your show, they'll write up articles about how progressive and moving forward your show is. Which is hilarious, because while everyone is patting themselves on the back about how this show is a gigantic leap forward for representation and women heroes, to me, it's a gigantic step backwards. The CW, or as it was known at the time, the WB, put out a show in 1997 called Buffy the Vampire Slayer that featured a female hero as the lead, as well as a lesbian hero who by the end of the series was actually more powerful than the lead of the show. But unlike Ruby Rose, who I would categorize as a quote-unquote lady boss, which basically means she's a block of wood with no real character that says lines like, I don't follow the rules, and blah 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 women, and blah 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 feminism, meh. But unlike Batwoman, that show wasn't satisfied with just having a woman be the lead of a TV show. She actually had to be a fully fleshed out character leading a TV show. Now, I know if you Google Buffy the Vampire Slayer now, you'll get a ton of results about how Buffy was actually secretly racist, or 15 ways Buffy was more problematic than you thought. But honestly, that is to the show's credit because the show actually had characters, and characters have faults. They make bad decisions. And if you listen to the people who write those articles and you strip out everything about a character that makes them unique, that makes them interesting, that makes them compelling, you end up with a crap show like Batwoman that they'll criticize anyway as not being progressive enough. That show should be the standard for female characters going forward, especially for shows on the CW, considering that 20 years ago, that was what was airing on their network. I find it amazing that people in the media today are calling people like me sexist for wanting shows with female leads to have characters as interesting and compelling as a show that came out in 1997. A feminist show that came out in 1997. Now, I'm willing to give the show a couple more episodes because, as I said earlier in the video, a lot of shows have bad starts, but they turn it around later in the season. But honestly, as somebody who really couldn't get into the Arrowverse besides a couple of seasons of Flash, I'm willing to acknowledge that if I still don't like the show a couple of episodes in, and it's not crazy SJW bad, then maybe it's me, and maybe I've just outgrown this kind of TV personally. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like this video, then please show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social medias. If you want to support me, you can do so via one-time donation on Venmo or PayPal, or you can do so monthly through Patreon or Subscribestar. This has been me talking about Batwoman. Till next time.